I've been listening to a preacher preach on the book of Revelation, and he's been preaching on that book for, I think, 2 to 3 weeks now, and he's not doing a very good job. He's not keeping up. He's still preaching on the 7 letters to the churches, in chapter 2 and 3. So he's taking his time, and I don't know how long it's going to take him to get through the book. But I think he's going to preach a series on the whole book. So he's working his way through very slowly, and I listen to it every chance I get. So, but he's not helping me much because he's way behind.
Maybe we should pause for a while.
Well, this morning we're going to talk about a new heaven and a new earth. In last Sunday's lesson in chapter 19, we talked about the marriage feast, and in between these 2 lessons, chapter 20, we had the millennial for the 1,000 years that Satan was bound and put into a bottomless pit that he couldn't deceive or harm anyone. And at the end of the 1,000 years, the scriptures tell us that Satan is let loose for a short period of time, and he gathers all the warriors he can from the 4 corners of the earth and goes to do battle against God. I find that kind of remarkable, I guess, because God is the creator of all things. And Satan gathered his group together to do battle with him. And of course, there really wasn't any battle at all. God sent down fire from above and destroyed all of the armies, plus Satan then was thrown into the fire and brimstone, and that's where he will be forever and ever. And then we get to chapter 21 that we're going to look at today. Well, I should say too, after Satan was thrown into hell, there's a great white throne judgment that takes place. And at that great white throne judgment, there is a judge. And we think today of judges, many judges. One judge may rule one thing, and another judge may rule the opposite. But this judge, at the great white throne judgment, there's no jury. There's no defendants, no prosecutors. There's just a judge, the judge. And it says all the men and women who are unbelievers will stand before him, and they will be judged, and they will have nothing to say against the judgment. And there's where they will be also sent into hell for eternity in the fire and brimstone. All right, as we look at chapter 21 is in our lesson today, we have to stay with the first 8 verses because verse 9 starts next Sunday's lesson. So we can't go too far. But it tells us here in chapter 21, verse 1, and I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. Now there's a new heaven and a new earth that is coming. I think we think of this earth as still being a pretty nice place to view and to see and to visit. But this earth needs to also pass away as well as the heavens because of man's sin. And it tells us here that the heavens and the earth will pass away. And the scriptures tell us that it will be burned with fervent heat. And if we would look at, I think it's Romans chapter 8, and verse 22 tells us that the earth groaneth because of sin. And the earth changes. I just heard something a week or so ago on some kind of a documentary about the Niagara Falls, and said how the falls changes 1 foot every year. And I'd never heard anything like that before, but with the waters rushing over the falls, it moves 1 foot a year. And so the earth does change. So the earth and the heavens will be passed away. And also it says no more sea. Did you read anything about why there would be no more sea?
The sea in John's time was viewed as dangerous and changeable. It was also the source of the beast.
Okay. The sea, oftentimes we read in Jesus' lifetime on earth that it become tempestuous, and he'd have to calm the sea. And as Terry said, talks about the dead of the sea will come out of it, and and I think in the new heaven and the new earth there needs to be no sea, for we have a river flowing from the throne of God of living water that people will be able to see and to be a part of. And the sea was oftentimes thought of as evil. The whole earth has been corrupted by the fall. And in verse 2 then we see, and John saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. So we have the holy city coming down from heaven. We usually think of heaven as being upward, but here it's telling us that the New Jerusalem will come down, and that's where believers will spend eternity, in this New Jerusalem. And have you read on the size of what the New Jerusalem will be? I can't tell you just where, but I know the scriptures say it'll be a 1,500 mile or 1,400 mile cube. So the length, the breadth, the height of it And one writer spoke that if all the people that's ever lived in this world could habitate on the final or the lower part of it and never have to be anywhere else. So whether this will be, 1,500 miles high or 1,400 miles high, you wonder if people is going to be different stages, different heights, or will all people be in one area equal? I don't know that. There's a lot of questions about this new heaven and the new Jerusalem. And we do get some information, but there's much we don't know. And there's a greatness of it, I think, that we will see when we are a part of it. So it's coming down from God out of heaven. In verse 3, I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, "Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them and be their God." God dwells with us today, but I'm taking from what is saying here in verse 3 that in the New Jerusalem, in heaven, God's dwelling with man will be different than it is today. God dwells with us in spirit. But there'll be something different about God dwelling with man in the New Jerusalem. He'll be with them as he is with man today, but I think he will be with them, and God and people will be able to dwell with Jesus the Christ. He will be able to dwell with us. We will see him as we do not see him today, but we will then. And so there'll be something there that is different and more intimate than what we even have today in our relationship with God and with Christ. All right, verse 4. "And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away." It's going to be worth going there. I think there's about 6 things here it denotes that there will be no more of in this new Jerusalem. To think there will be no funerals, no more funeral processions, no more pain, no more sickness. I think these are some of the greatest promises in the entire Bible. And these are contrasted to the curses that were given to man in Genesis chapter 3, where Adam was told that the earth was cursed, the ground was cursed. Well, the curse will be gone. Verse number 5, and he that sat upon the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. And he said unto me, Write, for these words are true and faithful. God is now speaking here. I don't think before, I think it was an angel that was speaking, but God speaks now here in verse 5. And he said, He is making all things new. Of course, we know when God speaks that everything that He has said is true and faithful. And he said unto me in verse 6, and he said, It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give unto him that is athirst of the fountain of water of life freely. We oftentimes say it is done or it is finished, but we find out or we learn that it isn't. Things that we may have missed or forgotten. But God doesn't miss or forget anything. So when He says it is finished or it's done, it's done. And there's no questions asked about it. And it's revealing of God's absolute sovereignty over all things. God stands at the beginning of creation, and now He stands at the end in a new creation. Any questions or comments? Verse 7, He that overcometh shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son. What does it mean to overcome?
When the trials of life come upon you, you do that which is righteous and faithful.
And there are many. First John 5, verses 4 and 5 tells us, For whatsoever is born of God overcometh the world, and this is the victory that overcometh the world, even our faith. Who is he that overcometh the world, but he that believeth? So we cannot overcome without faith and without belief. Verse 8, but the fearful and unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. These are those who stand before God at the great white throne judgment. The scripture says that the books were opened, and those that stood before him at the great white throne judgment were told of the deeds that they did in their lifetime. And this is where God is judge. And as I said, there's no jury, no defendants, no prosecutors. But God has this all in his book. And the scriptures tell us then that those who were not written, he has more than one book, because the other book is the book of life. And those who are not written, names are not written in the book of life, would stand before him in the great white throne judgment. And of course, from the great white throne judgment, they were sentenced to their second death. Here is a stark contrast between those who will be cast into the lake of fire and those who have tasted of the water of life. The inheritance of this group of people is the second death. The contrast in outcome for both groups is laid out in no uncertain terms. Failure to respond leads to an unthinkable eternity. And we each one have that opportunity today to make a choice. And I can't think of anyone who would want to make a choice of spending an unthinkable eternity in the lake of fire. And that choice is ours today. Okay, any questions, any comments? Your turn to talk. I've said all I know, and that's not very much. If you don't talk, I'm going to be able to go to dinner early.
I guess when all things are made new, that's beyond our imagination.
Yeah, there's different parts of the scripture that gives us some inclination of what everything made new will be, but there's so much that we do not know. I was telling John this morning, I woke up early and I was thinking about a song. And the title of the song was, I've Got a Mansion Over the Hilltop. And that's scriptural. Well, I don't know about the hilltop, but about having a mansion. It says in John 14, 2 and 3, that Jesus has went to prepare a place for us, a mansion. And he will come again and receive us unto himself, that where he is, we will also be forever and ever. And like you said, Drina, I think there'll be so many things in the new creation that we can't comprehend it, and it's probably why we're not told, because we wouldn't be able to understand it all anyways. But God gives us enough that all that we need to know. Anyone else? Mike?
I find it interesting that we try to quantify heaven with our own human understanding. And we try to think of heaven's going to be so many miles and it's going to hold so many people. Well, I say, well, it can't hold them all. God got this all planned out already. He knows what it's like standing before looking at the book of life. What if it's played back in real time? What if if I'm standing there, or those people are standing there and they've lived 80 years, 100 years? What is that in God's time? It's nothing. It's as a snap of a finger. When we try to think about this and say, well, this is the way it's going to happen. I don't think so. It's not. We don't have the faintest understanding of what these places, heaven, hell, book of life. We try to, as I said, think about that in our terms that we can understand. We know what a mile is, but a mile to God is nothing. And He's got His own understanding of how He has prepared heaven and hell for us, and we can't understand that in our way of thinking. I think everybody's looking at the Tesla car. Well, a few years ago, nobody even thought about that. Now that's the great thing is it's a new car coming out, and I think we discover things as life goes on, and God's already got this thought out and planned for heaven. It's been in His understanding. He doesn't measure by miles or feet or years or lifespans. So it's something that we will experience as we pass through heaven or into heaven. And so it's going to be interesting if we comprehend things of that nature. And so I think it's still interesting to think about heaven, but yet it will be different, as I understand.
Well, I think about the New Jerusalem. It says there's going to be 12 gates. They will never be shut. And it just makes me wonder, because no one will be able to enter Jerusalem, the New Jerusalem, except those who belong to God, those who have given their lives to Him. Why are there gates? I don't understand all of that. We know there's no sun or moon. God will be the light, and God will be the glory, and Jesus will be the light for the New Jerusalem. So yeah, there's a lot of questions that we don't know, but God gives us enough to know that we can certainly make our choices, and whether that's where we want to spend eternity or not. Okay, if you have nothing else, why, you have a good week, and be sure to come back next Sunday. We'll go on to the next lesson.